Time now for Morning Rounds, our look at the medical news of the week. Antibiotic resistance. That's when drugs lose their ability to stop an infection. It's a growing health problem in the U.S. and around the globe.
According to the Centers for Disease Control, an estimated 2 million Americans deal with antibiotic-resistant infections every year, and 23,000 end up losing their lives. A new report from the CDC looked specifically at unusual types of antibiotic resistance. Here to talk about that and more is CBS News medical contributor Dr. Tara Narula. Tara, good morning.
Good morning, Dana.
So they call this nightmare bacteria. What does that mean exactly?
It doesn't sound good.
No, no. That I know.
These bacteria are predominantly untreatable, so resistant to most antibiotics. They tend to be uncommon, and they also can carry genes that can spread resistance to other bacteria. They're a big problem for hospitals and nursing facilities. They have a very high mortality rate. And so in this study, they took about 6,000 samples. 25% of them carried those genes that could be resistance genes that they could pass on. And interestingly, when they looked at asymptomatic contacts of people who had had these infections, 11% of those also were carriers or essentially colonized with these superbugs. So the CDC really said this was way more than they expected in terms of numbers and probably underestimates the true number. So it is pretty scary.
The report highlights the CDC's containment strategy. What is it, and is it working?
So containment strategy, not really a new thing. And essentially, they liken it to stopping a wildfire. So the idea is to catch these things when they're a spark or a very small fire, to contain them, to extinguish them before they become a wildfire, and it's very difficult at that point. And so it's really 5 steps that they talk about. The first is rapid identification of these infections and the mechanism that makes them resistant, going in and having on-site infection control, screening those people around the infected person to see who might be asymptomatic and colonized, and then basically continuing to have a facilitated, coordinated group of people involving hospitals, labs, the CDC, all looking at this and staying on top of it until they've stopped the spread.
One of the issues is the antibiotics that are prescribed also in the antibiotic resistance. So what role do doctors play in all this in prescribing antibiotics?
Well, we do play a big role, and certainly education is key. And we know that still today about 30% of antibiotic prescriptions given out in offices and ERs are unnecessary. Of the 70% that are necessary, we can do a better job at picking the right drug, picking the duration that we give that drug and the dose. And I think one of the things the CDC mentioned in this report that's so important for people to understand is that these antibiotics, they are what they call a safety net for large groups of people, cancer patients, patients in the ICU, surgical patients, organ transplant patients. If they don't have access to antibiotics because they have now resistance in these bacteria, this is a problem for those groups.
Our next topic, 3 women, all cancer survivors, are suing a Cleveland area fertility clinic after the clinic unintentionally destroyed more than 4,000 embryos and eggs.
The lawsuit announced Monday is the latest against the clinic. Tara has been closely following the story.
Losing my fertility was not an option for me.
In an emotional press conference, the cancer survivors told similar and painful stories.
I risked my life and delayed my chemotherapy treatments because having a family was so important to me.
Rachel Mell says when she learned her eggs were gone, it was like a punch to the gut.
Because of the carelessness of university hospitals, I have now lost all hopes of ever having biological children.
The new lawsuit alleges university hospitals did not notify its clients or double-check to make sure its local and remote monitoring systems were functional, despite being aware of issues with the liquid nitrogen storage tank in the weeks preceding last month's malfunction. In a letter to patients last week, university hospitals admitted the tank in question needed preventative maintenance prior to the March 3rd incident. The tanks that protect embryos are often exempt from government oversight, but there are proposals in the works for new regulations. Ohio State Senator Joe Schiavone is in the early stages of crafting regulatory legislation with fellow lawmakers.
If something goes wrong with the chemical makeup of this tank, then there should be a trigger, there should be alarm, and there needs to be somebody there that could remedy the situation immediately.
But for some, the suggested regulations have come too late.
UH must be held accountable for shattering our dreams and for forever altering the courses of each of our lives.
University hospitals responded to Monday's press conference in a statement saying, "We watched 3 women share their stories of the loss they suffered. We are profoundly sorry for their loss and are committed to helping make sure this never happens again anywhere."
Your heart just breaks for them. I mean, what can they do in the future to prevent this?
I think the biggest thing is that it's been really a Wild West, and so the FDA and states, they need to step in and provide regulation.
All right. Dr. Narula, thank you.